And I remember standing there saying, what in the heck am I doing here? My name is Todd Smith, and I'm a deacon here at St. Peter Parish. Having come into the Catholic Church when I was 37 years old, it all goes back, I think, to probably the college days. And I had come out of a military prep school and gone on to college in one of those great big universities. And it was a big change, and it was during Vietnam, the student strikes, the Kent State massacre, all the demonstrations and rebellions that were going on in those days. And here I am coming out of a nice structured military prep school. So college life was pretty interesting. And in my freshman year, I did meet a young lady there. Now she's my wife, but she's a cradle Catholic, and I was raised as a sort of a Episcopalian, part-timer kind of thing. I mean, we went to church sometimes and sometimes we didn't. My father, this is interesting because my father was raised Catholic and my mom was raised Episcopalian. So somewhere along the line in the marriage, they agreed to just raise us kids in the Episcopal Church rather than Catholic. So I had no exposure to the Catholic Church other than, there wasn't a great feeling for it, I don't think, within the family or within my parents' attitude. Jan, being the cradle Catholic, never really pushed anything about, oh, you really need to become Catholic or anything like that. She never preached to me, but she agreed that she was going to raise the kids Catholic, and if I wanted to be part of that, then fine. And if not, then, she'd always put a little bug in my ear about something. And she had to ask me if I wanted to drop off, or if I could drop off the kids at church. They were having some sort of a little function for the kids. And so I agreed. I said, well, okay, sure. And she said, you may want to just stay there or drop them off and come back, but maybe just stay there and watch if you want. Again, it's my wife putting a little bug in my ear. So I did. I took the kids there, and I went into the church with them, and I said, well, I might as well just sit in the back pew and just watch what happens. The people there were so nice. I mean, they were welcoming, inviting, and they started the kids off with a beautiful little prayer that they had put together. And the way they treated the kids was awesome. I mean, I'm used to, being in corporate America. I'm used to being in the Marine Corps and military school and all of that kind of stuff. And so seeing this kind of an environment that the kids were able to be exposed to me was just beautiful. I mean, I was really touched. So after that, the one couple came up to me and introduced themselves and asked me a couple of questions about, they didn't recognize me because I hardly ever go to Mass. And so they invited me to some things. And I mean, it's just really, it was really nice. And I got to know that couple very, very well. He was in the military, so we kind of had that as a sort of a connection between the two of us. And one day he asked me if I would mind going on a 3-day retreat. Well, when I got to the retreat, I looked around and I met some of the other guys that were on this retreat. It was an all-men's retreat. And I remember standing there saying, what in the heck am I doing here? But I was so deeply touched by this, the whole experience. And it was interesting that what the other seed that she had planted for me was this RCIA program we knew nothing about, but she saw it in the church bulletin. And she said, you may want to go on over there and just check this RCIA program out just to ask some questions, confuse them if you want, pin them down on some things that you've had questions about in the church. And I thought, well, okay, I think I will do that. Because I majored in theology in college. So I'm smarter than these Catholics. I knew all the answers. I mean, I knew Soren Kierkegaard, I knew Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I knew all the great theologians, of course. So in the RCIA program that they had, one of the questions that they ask always is, have you ever been baptized? Now, at that point, my parents were both deceased. I was 36 years old at that time, and all my relatives, except for one aunt, were deceased. So, so when they asked me if I had been baptized, I said, I think I have, and I really don't know for sure, but I believe it was in Garden City, Long Island, where we lived at that time. The nun who was running the RCIA program in that church, and this was in Rockville, Maryland, the nun that was there said, "Oh, you know what? I'm from Garden City. I know everybody there. I know all the different denominations. I know all the priests and all the ministers and the different churches. I'll find out for you." So I thought, well, that's great. Well, about 2 or 3 months later, I got an envelope, a big envelope in the mail at home, opened it up, and Jan was standing right there with me, and I opened it up and I looked at it, and sure enough, it was my baptismal certificate. And all along, I had been baptized Catholic, which I had no idea how that had happened. I looked down on the bottom of the certificate, and my sponsor was my grandmother. So I called my aunt, who was in Ohio, and I said, "Aunt Betty, can you tell me how did I get baptized Catholic? Because I know my parents were not Catholic, or they didn't want to raise us Catholic." And she says, "Well, I was sworn to secrecy until this would be an appropriate time, I guess, since you're coming into the church, and now that you're an adult, and your grandparents are both deceased anyway. But what happened was that your grandmother, my grandma, she had told my parents one day if they would like, they could go off and go shopping, go out to dinner, just take it easy, and that she would babysit me. And so she did when I was 1 month old. This was in January of 1950. And so she did that. And when they took off, she took me down to St. Anastasia Church in Douglaston, Long Island, and had the priest baptize me. And that's how it happened. She did it secretly without them knowing. And Jan and I looked at each other when we saw that, and we were both in tears. I mean, it was just, here I am consciously coming into the Catholic Church at 36, almost 37 years old, when all along I'd been baptized Catholic. So that was pretty interesting. Every time I sit in the sanctuary assisting at Mass, as the deacon of the Mass, I'm sitting up there, and at one point I'll always say to myself, or maybe I'm praying really, how the heck did this happen? How is it that me, a guy who wasn't raised Catholic and had absolutely no clue about the Catholic Church, that it's me that comes into the Catholic Church, and now here I am as a deacon, when so many people here know so much more than I do about Catholicism. At the point where that decision was made, it was not just a sudden decision by any means. It was something that had taken a long time, and a lot of seeds were planted for me that allowed me to come to that decision. But I do remember sitting in the living room with my wife. We were living in the Baltimore area at that time, and I looked at Jan and I said, "Honey, do you think now is the right time for me to consider being a deacon? Because I really do feel the calling. I feel like this is the right time." And she had a big smile on her face. She says, "Honey, I'll be glad to support you in any way I can, and I am fully in favor of it. And whatever I can do, you just let me know." And we hugged each other and talked about it for quite a while, going to classes with my wife, because they do encourage the wives to please come and attend the classes, because otherwise you kind of get left behind a little bit. There can be some sort of a gap that might take place otherwise. But we would come out of those classes together, and it helped us to connect so many dots about Scripture and about theology and about God, and all those little questions that pop up sometimes about suffering and where's God when there's suffering, all those different things. There has to be something more to life than just existence. There has to be something more to life than just the day-to-day details of life itself. There's something more to life. As I pondered and prayed about that, even when I had come into the church, pondering and praying about that allows me to trust in God and trust in the fact that God is with us all the time. It allows me to understand better the purpose in life, which is far beyond, just that day-to-day drudgery of details after details after details. And in the Catholic faith, the depth that is in there allows us to not only come to Mass and to receive the Eucharist and do all those things that are wonderful and gracious, but it allows us to really dig deep into the Word of God, to dig deep into what the universe really is made up of, and the cause and effect relationship that exists. And I think it's through that kind of depth that the Catholic faith gives us, that gives us strength and gives us the courage to smile and to be to understand that love is something that's given to us by God. Understand so much more than just not just the drudgery of life, but there's something else there. There's something else in this parish that we're in, and to know the people that are here that are so not only warm and welcoming, but they're willing to step out. They're willing to do something more than just come to Mass and leave, And that's the kind of world that we need to be living in, a world where we can learn to overcome division, and we can be in a world that strives for some sort of unity and strives for being able to communicate with each other that shows love and respect and dignity. And if we can see those things when we come to be with each other in this building, then it nourishes our hearts and minds so that we can do the same thing when we leave this building, when we walk out into the community. And that, to me, is what life is really all about, is being able to understand who God is in our lives and who he is in relationship to us, and understanding that love that God has for us, we can turn right around and put that love in other people's hearts.